Hi, I'm Azara Tagaya, your host for Ringgit Sense. On last week's episode, we talked about what are the starting salaries that fresh graduates are getting when they enter the working world. Now, the salaries range from 1,500 to 2,500 ringgit. With the cost of living going up, fresh graduates are having a harder time surviving on their first salary, especially in the greater Klang Valley. Now, this is why financial planning is very important in today's episode. Now, we're going to talk about the common financial planning mistakes that young working adults make and how you can avoid them. First up, we meet up with Ui Chia Shen, senior writer at comparehero.my, who recently took up a financial challenge where he spent 30 days on a strict budget, surviving on only 700 ringgit. Is it possible? This is what he has to say.
Can you survive 30 days on just 700 ringgit in the Klang Valley? Ui Chia Shen thinks so. In fact, he can prove it. He's a senior writer at comparehero.my, and he recently undertook a challenge for the site, living on just 700 ringgit in May 2017. He's listed down his budget on the Compare Hero website and also documented each day's spending on social media using the hashtag 30daysbudgethero.
For the past 3 years, I've been working, but I've not done anything to track my own expenses. And every month, by the month end, I'll just be wondering where have I spent my money. Transportation, I've been taking public transport, and back then there was 50% discount for coming out early, between 6 to 7 o'clock if I take RT rides. So that helped me to save a lot. And I tend to walk for quite some distance, so compared to driving to work, it helped me to save a lot. And then the rest, entertainment during the weekends, I don't really allocate anything so that I can force myself to have fun without spending.
For food, he spent only 10 to 15 ringgit per day.
So usually I'll just choose simple and cheap ingredients, eggs, potatoes, spaghetti, without going crazy in terms of like luxury ingredients, avocado, those kind of stuff. So you have to know that what are the food or ingredients you can afford, but still deliver the nutrients you need for the day. So yeah.
This is the amount he spent during the challenge. And at the end of the month, he still had about 50 ringgit to spare. It's a good thing that his friends were also very supportive.
I think in return, it sort of create a mindset for them that, oh, he is trying to achieve this challenge thingy, so it's okay when he decided to choose to bail out when we are doing this. And instead, they might take a step back and think, maybe we should be doing this and make a better choices when it comes to spending.
Shen says that having self-discipline is probably the hardest part, but the first step is to plan carefully and set out a budget for yourself before you spend any of the money that you make.
Spreading the news to your friends is that it has another positive effect in terms of governing yourself, so that when you're doing the extras like spending a lot on this and that, on food, and your friends will sort of kind of give you the looks and say that, hey, I thought you're doing this budget challenge thingy. So it gives you a good reminder that, no, you have to be disciplined. So yeah.
Well, that's Ui Chia Shen's story. And now in our studio today, we have Annie Hoare, a licensed financial advisor. Hi, Annie. How are you?
Hi, Zara. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for spending time with us and sharing with us about planning your finances.
Yep.
Now, as we saw in the clip just now, this person spent 700 ringgit a month in just 30 days. So what do you think when you watch that? Is that a realistic budget, especially for someone who's living in the Klang Valley in this time and age?
It's actually amazing to see that he could spend $700, and that I assume including rental, transportation and food. It actually is doable if you put your mind and heart to it. And like he said, like a gentleman said, he had to put discipline into it, and then he has to also track his expenses, which these are the steps that people should do. People should have a budget, should have a plan, should track where their money goes to every month. Of course, $700 can be a little bit stretched sometimes, but he did not mention if he has also include like insurance, savings and investment into it. If it's just basic expenses, which is your food, your accommodation and your transportation, I think is still doable in Klang Valley. If you're renting a room, or if you're not renting and you're staying with a family, I think that's still doable.
When we're talking about saving money and when we want to fix something, we have to look at the problems first. So what would you say are the 5 biggest planning mistakes that people make when it comes to saving?
I think number 1 is that people think that people do not have a plan. People do not have a proper plan. Of course, everything we do and we want to accomplish, we should have a plan. Be it, let's say, where you want to be in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years financially. You have to ask yourself, okay, if my goal is to retire, when do I want to retire? How do I want to retire? How much do I need to retire? You need to have that so that you will know that today, this is where I am. I need a financial roadmap to go to where I want to go. You know, if you do not know where you're going, even if you reach the point, you don't know when to stop. You don't know that you have actually reached that destination. So it's always important to have that plan. All right. Second thing is that I think the other thing that people tend to make a mistake is that they think it's too early to save. So like the gentleman just now, he started, I'm assuming he started savings, and he managed to cram down his expenses to $700. That's a very, very disciplined thing to do. That's a very, very hard thing to do sometimes, but it takes a lot of discipline. So if you need to save, to be honest, let's be honest, people rather spend than save. You ask them to save, they say, I rather spend on my coffee, my vacation, my anything but save, you know. And I advise clients is that people, young adults, and I say, try and pay yourself first every month and put aside minimum 10 to 20% of your salary into an account. And that account is either for your retirement or your savings or reserve fund. Have a proper goal. And by doing that, it's a habit, no matter which stage of life, whether you're just starting out, you have a family, you know, you're almost retiring, you know, you always have that habit with you. And of course, another one thing I tell people is that do not put all your savings into one bank account. Because when you do that, a lot of money in the bank account, right? So it's better to split. So if you have a savings account, you put it for savings purpose, like for short term, like for your reserve fund. If you have a treats account, like I mentioned, then you put it for like your holiday fund. So you know that when you look at your holiday, you know you cannot touch your savings account. You can only touch your treats account. So it's very clear cut. That way.
I see. Okay, so 5 simple things, planning mistakes, and 5 ways you can actually rectify it. Okay, so when we come back, we'll be talking more about financial planning with our guest, Annie Ho, in the studios. We are going to take a short break. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Ringgit Sense. You're still with me, Azaria Tagaya, and we're talking about financial planning. But before we continue with the discussion, though, we spoke to another young working adult to try to understand how money is being spent these days. Let's watch.
This is Zul. He's 32, single, and works as a lecturer in UiTM's Perak campus. And he earns about 3,500 ringgit a month.
Saya habiskan lebih kurang RM350 untuk sewa rumah sebab saya menyewa di Seri Iskandar Perak. Saya berasal daripada Puchong dan setiap 2 minggu saya akan pulang ke kampung halaman untuk bertemu dengan ibu bapa saya. Jadi itu lebih kurang kalau kita pergi balik lebih kurang dalam RM300. Jadi itu dah RM650 kan habis.
He's lucky that rent in Perak is quite affordable, and living close to the office, he spends about 50 ringgit on fuel per week.
Makan, dobi, bayar bil dan sebagainya, itu lebih kurang dalam RM200. Insurans saya RM220 dan juga perbelanjaan lain-lain lah. Macam contohlah kalau kita tiba-tiba ada dinner ke, balik family ajak makan ke, apa ke, itu pun nak kena kira juga kan. Jadi pembelanjaan hangus saya tiap-tiap bulan lebih kurang RM1,500 hingga RM2,000.
Zul says one of the ways he saves is to avoid owing money to the bank.
Disebabkan saya beli kereta saya second hand, jadi saya ada kumpul sedikit duit lah untuk beli kereta tu secara cash. Tapi duit yang ada tu tak mencukupi. Jadi saya minta pinjam daripada emak saya separuh. Jadi saya bayar separuh. Jadi basically saya tak ada monthly commitment untuk bayar kereta. Sebab saya beli kereta secara cash.
Zul is one of the many Malaysians who have decided to venture into gaining a second income. So, he and his partner opened a landscape consultation company in Petaling Jaya.
Sebenarnya memang bila saya decide untuk buka second business ni adalah untuk menjana pendapatan saya lah setiap bulan. Sebab kalau ikutkan 3,500 dengar macam banyak. Jadi gaji tetap saya di UiTM sebagai pensyarah akan habis di belanja, tapi gaji part time saya sebagai landscape architect dekat company saya jadikan itu sebagai duit simpanan saya.
Zul travels between his two jobs in Perak and Selangor often. He finds that the cost of living in the Klang Valley is much higher.
Bekerja di Klang Valley sebenarnya susah. You kena bayar tol satu hari RM10, minyak you sebab you sangkut dekat dalam jam lama kan. Jadi untuk mengelakkan kita berbelanja spend banyak duit pada pembelanjaan hangus seperti minyak tol dan sebagainya, jadi saya limitkan pergerakan saya mengikut jadual kerja saya.
To set up his office in Petaling Jaya, he bought used furniture and even painted the office himself.
Kita nak tanggung diri kita pun susah kan. Maksudnya kalau kita tanggung diri kita seorang, kita tak cukup duit, tak makan tak apa diri kita kan. Tapi bila kita dah once kita dah ada family, dah ada anak, komitmen tu akan bertambah.
At the end of the day, he hopes to earn more to start a family.
Well, that's Zul's story, one of the many Malaysians living in Malaysia today on a typical salary. And we are back with our guest, Annie Hoare, licensed financial advisor. Now, what do you think when you watch that clip? That's a typical Malaysian. Usually people make around 2,000 to 3,000, 3,005, and they're finding it hard to live, especially in the Klang Valley.
Correct. I think cost of living in Klang Valley is indeed higher than the other states, and that when Zul is choosing to also make some extra income, and by saving those incomes especially, and not depending only on his first income. He said he's saving those money. So his income as a lecturer, he is using it, but as a part-time landscaper, he is actually saving those money, because he realized that as time goes by, his commitment will increase. When he has a family and all, it will no longer just be him. It will be more. Yeah. So I think, but he's very good is that he has a budget. He knows where his money is going every time, every month, and always a workable budget is. It's important to ensure that you have enough for your income and your expenditure and your savings. Without tracking expenses, I think without tracking your expenses, like the first gentleman and Zul, both of them have a track. They track like where their money is going, and it's important because you do not want to reach to the third week of the month and you realize that, oh, I do not have enough, you know, and I now have to, instead of eating out, I've been eating out for the first 2 weeks. Now, by the time the third and fourth week comes, I'm actually eating cup noodles in the office. You know, you don't want to have that. You want to have a balance so that every week you have enough for every week of expenditure. Like the first gentleman, he spends almost quite the same amount every week. Yeah.
Just now we talked about some financial planning tips from you. First is to save a percentage of your income every month.
Correct.
And then the second one is to have separate bank accounts so that you don't spend everything that you have.
Correct.
So what about the rest of the tips that you have?
People should not overcommit to debts. Like the two gentlemen, they know that this is what they can afford, you know, and they do not go for something that, they do not go and spend something that beyond their means, for example. And I think one time my client came to ask me and said that, Annie, I would like to buy this car, and it's cost 150,000. So I said, okay, can you afford the monthly repayment? He said he could. But after we sit down and discuss further, the reason he could afford it is because he has not put aside reserve funds, he has not put aside the minimum 10% I've mentioned. So that's why he could afford, because it's just like ngam cukup, pay for the car loan repayment. So it's very dangerous because you will reach to a point, if you do not have reserve fund, if your car breaks down, you need to fix it. And if you do not have reserve funds, you'll be using borrowed money again. Yeah.
So some very useful tips from Annie there, but we are going for another short break. If you want to know how to spend and how to save, stay with us on Ringgit Sense. Back on Ringgit Sense with me, Azaria Tagaya. Now, from using public transportation to packing your own lunch to staying in on the weekends, we asked you, what methods do you use to save money? Now, here's what you guys on Facebook had to say.
Yeti says that when she was studying, she would do all her assignments in cafes because it has free and fast Wi-Fi. And she would only go to the movies on weekdays and use her student card for discounts. Fires says when he studied in Sydney, the bus fare was expensive, so he would stay on campus between classes even if the gap was more than 8 hours. He also packed his own meals. His scholarship was used solely for student fees, and he did housekeeping jobs to get money for other things, like traveling. Ismira says her simple tip is to save first before spending, as many people don't necessarily follow this rule these days. She would do this by setting aside some funds in a piggy bank and assume to forget about it for some time. When you check back, you'll be surprised at how much you've saved. For young mom Adriana, she brings her own drinking water for her family every time they go out. Learning how to cook has also helped save money, and when she was studying, she worked a part-time job at the same time. She offers this advice: use Wi-Fi at the library instead of cafes, as there is no need to buy.
Some tips from savvy Malaysians there. And now we're back with Annie Hoare, licensed financial advisor. Now, what do you think about those tips on how to save money every day?
Actually, I think I learned so much new tips from them. I think it's really good that people are trying to find ways to save money, not just blaming and complaining that they need to spend on Wi-Fi and things like that, and they're using the resources that are available. And I really second that, because I feel that if the resources are available, and I too myself will go for things like, you know, buy one free one apps, you know, or for example, like bring your own tumbler and you save in your coffee, for example. I would do that. People may think, oh, it's so hassle, you know, it's so cheapskate, they will look like that. But I would say that it's not. If you can save those money, a little bit goes a long way. If you save, for example, $2, and if you have a coffee every day and you save $2 every day, 30 days is already 60 ringgit. I tell people you save a lot of money. And things like, you know, you cut unnecessary expenditure, and every money goes a long way. Every single dollar goes a long way. And little do you know that the money that you save, even if it's just $60, if you multiply by 12 months, for example, it's over $700. And 700 ringgit, for example, you can easily buy a flight ticket to somewhere you want to go. You know, so people don't see the little money that they are saving that can help them purchase those vacation that they want, you know, instead of using borrowed money, for example.
Okay, so going back to our guest earlier from the clip, Zul, he says that right now he is single and he's finding it hard to spend for himself. So he cannot imagine one day when he has family, maybe a child, maybe 2 children. How can he manage?
I think as a couple, it's usually important to work together as a couple. If his wife is working, for example, they should both communicate and talk about their finances, on how they can both work together to manage the expenses together. And it's important to have each other be on the same page, because if he is there very diligently saving all the money and all, but his spouse unfortunately is spending all his money, then it doesn't jive, you know. So it's important to have a chemistry and a sync in that way. So yes, it is with cost of living increasing, it's also very hard. But with Zol, I remember that he's actually saving those money that he's earning from his part-time income. So the key is to do not overcommit and do not commit further on unnecessary expenses. So once you have like your 10 to 20% set aside, then you know that I could put this 10-20% as my wedding fund, my children's fund, for example, and later part as my baby planning, for example, or my children's education planning. So it's manageable, so long they do not overcommit and also do spend within their means. And the bottom line is that I also remembered Zol mentioned that he does not have a debt. He does not have a car debt, for example, which is good. Which is good. He doesn't owe the bank. So whatever he make, he can save it, invest it, and have a very good. Saving is important, but people should start investing as well to make the money grow. Saving is, unfortunately, is only good for reserve monies, but it cannot make your money compound at a very good return, for example. So it's important to also look at possible ways to invest your money further so that you can counter like inflation rates and etc.
Okay, so you gave us some tips, financial planning tips. You gave us mistakes to avoid. Now, before we wrap though, what would be your one advice to our viewers? Let's say we have a lot of young working adults watching us. Some of them might be thinking of having a family soon. So your one advice to start now on saving and financial planning?
I think you can begin a plan whether you're a young couple or you're ready to retire or you're somewhere in between. It doesn't matter where you are, but the most important is to start planning as soon as possible. Seek a trusted financial advisor's help if you need to look at your journey, to look at your financial plan, and to look at how can this financial advisor direct you in the right way, so that the earlier you start, the less mistake you make, and then the earlier you start, the earlier you save, like I said, the earlier you can retire and you reach your financial goals or etc. for example. So most importantly is to plan and plan and plan, because at the end of the day there's a saying that says, failure to plan is just planning to fail. So the earlier you plan, the better it is.
Yes, definitely. Okay, well, thank you so much for sharing, Annie, and I'm sure our viewers have learned a lot today on how to save for the future. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Azara. Thank you.
Okay, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to watch the stories that we aired today, go to our Facebook page at Ringgit Sense TV3. Next week on Ringgit Sense, we're going to be talking about get-rich-quick scams. We want to hear from you. Have you ever fallen victim to one or know someone who has? Share with us your experience on our Facebook page. I'm Azara Tagaya, and I will see you next week.